So good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present with you this afternoon. I think it's most important that I keep the community informed of what's happening within our district. I always believe if you don't tell your story, someone else will, and usually it's not the truth or it's not accurate. So I want to give you some accurate information and give you a space to understand what it is that we're doing as a district. I truly appreciate the support that we receive from Rotary while we're doing this work, because I believe the stronger our schools are, the stronger our community is, and we cannot grow without the support from you. So I thank you so much for that. As we go through the PowerPoint, you'll see it was created for our annual, as we've done it, State of the District address. And Mother Nature didn't call me to tell me that she was planning to do what she did. And so I did not want to just cancel and not provide this information. So we're kind of chunking this for the community to absorb this information. And so you'll see some slides in here where we introduce our board members, and if it were in person, they would be here personally. But I'm very grateful for our board because they've been more than supportive. Even with the fact of Mr. Landers, and I don't know if he wants to claim this, but Mr. Landers was on the board when the board made the decision to hire me. So I hope he has not changed his mind. But I truly appreciate the support of all the boards that I've had since I've been here as superintendent. Many of you realize that a superintendent can only get the work done if there's a board that's behind or beside or in front of to help lead that work. And that does not mean having a consensus every time that an idea is brought to the table. It means we have individuals who are invested in doing what's best for children. And so that's the primary goal of what a board does. They hire the superintendent, they make sure policies are being implemented, and we monitor the monies. And so those are the three big priorities. And I can again say that I'm truly grateful for the support of our board. I also have some individuals who work alongside with me because oftentimes people think I have this magical cape, but the work can't be done in isolation. It can't be done by one individual. So some of these individuals are here with me today, while some are somewhere else doing professional development, professional learning, because this date wasn't on the calendar when those events were scheduled. So I'm going to ask a few of them to stand. And it took me a moment because some of them, when they came in, you were like, and who are you? So I realized that there was no formal introductions made. So if we can go around, Dr. Carl Calcara, who's here. Can you stand for the people? Yes. Thank you, Dr. Calcara. So Dr. Calcara is our Chief Human Resource Officer. We also have Dr. Greiner, who's up the road doing professional learning. Marissa Cleaver-Womble, who is our Chief Communications Officer. Ms. Bassett is also up the street. Ms. Bassett is our Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Schools. We have here with us a pleasure of having Mr. Josh Husted, who's here with us. Mr. Husted is our Director of Operations. He's the one who allows me to stay grounded when we have to make those decisions that you all just called me out on a few moments ago. He and his team are the ones that are out on the roads 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I don't think people realize how we make those decisions, but we make those decisions by putting people in spaces, if you will, to determine what's best for children. And so Mr. Husted and his team actually goes out and they begin driving the roads literally 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they make that phone call. That's the worst part of it. They wake that phone call to wake me up to say this is how bad it is. And I don't know how they trust me when I'm making a decision at 4 o'clock in the morning, but they do. So we have Dr. Anthony Moore, who's the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary. He, again, is doing professional learning. Jackie Vernon, who's our Director of Business Operations. Right now, we're in budget season, and I'll talk about the budget a little later in the presentation. She's the money manager, if you will. And then we have Mr. Matt Verlinden, who is our Director of Technology, who's here today. We also have two individuals who are not shown here on the screen. I don't think they wanted to take the picture, even though they're in communications. But we have Miss Melanie Olson-Cox, who's in the back. For those of you, she works very closely with Ms. Cleaver-Womble. For those of you who've complimented the debuts of our TikToks, she's the brainchild behind most of them. And then we also have Mr. Colin Cloney, who many of you don't see because he's doing exactly what he normally does, hides behind the camera, but he's absolutely amazing in doing the work. And so as we talk about Raytown Quality Schools, just providing you with updated information, and this information may be accurate today, or was at least accurate when we put the presentation together, because it changes it forever changes every day. And so when we look at the makeup of our students, right now 51.4 of our students fall under the classification of being children of color or black children, our black population. And if you can see, 51% is a little more than half of our student population. Right now our enrollment numbers are 7,600, and I'll talk about that in a few. So we'll look and see how this breakdown actually occurs. While 20.5% of our students are classified as white, the other population of our students, 17% Hispanic. So what does that mean? That means that about 6% of our children, if not more, are speaking English as a second language. And so that means the way in which we provide instruction has to be diversified in order to meet the needs of all of our children. And when you look at the other races that exist within our district, I think the diversity that exists makes all the learning experiences better for all of us. It makes us stronger as educators and as leaders, because we're always finding different ways to make sure that we're delivering the content for our children to receive it. Because it's really about how our children are competitive as they enter into the workforce or as they graduate from high school. When we look at the data a little further, we're going to talk about how the information has also impacted our free and reduced meals. Right now, 59.4% of our children receive free and reduced meals. And so when we talk about federal funding, when we talk about sometimes removing those supports, if you will, we're talking about more than half of our children coming to school hungry. We have to make sure that we are feeding our children. Last year we hired an individual who is responsible for our food and nutrition. We hired someone also for nutrition, and I will tell you that our children are doing an amazing job with food. It was one of the first things that was brought to our attention when we came in. Every time I talk to children, I ask the question, what is it I can do to make your world better? And the first thing they all said, whether it was elementary, middle, or high school, they said food. And I was amazed at the fact that they were consistent. And so when kids say it, they are our primary customers, something that I always say. And if we're not meeting their needs, then we're not doing our job. So we've made some shifts, and you know what it is that they've wanted? Most people will say they wanted nuggets or they wanted burgers. Do you know what they wanted? Salad. And so Mr. Husted and his team have actually put salad bars in our schools, and when you see kids, there's more lettuce on the trays than anything else. And then the next complaint that came after the salad complaint, Dr. Martinox, we need more salad dressing. So I'm okay with that, because if that's all you're worried about, we can kind of make some things happen here. When we look at our special education population, these are our students who have IEPs or our students who need additional services, on top of our students who need additional services who speak English as a second language. So these are our students who have learning disabilities or some sort of disability that needs additional support and assistance, and we'll always continue to try to do what's best for our children. Our English learner population, it's 7.3%. The last time I looked, it was 6.9%, but as I said, that number changes hourly. When students are enrolling and withdrawing, they are coming into our district. We examine what their needs are so that we can continue to build programs to support them. When we look at our gifted population, it's been an area of focus for us. As 5.52% of our students are identified, not that they're not gifted, they're just identified at this particular point in time. And so while they may not have the label as being gifted, it does not mean they aren't. And so I always tell staff that we raise the bar for all children, whether they're gifted or not gifted. We raise the bar to make sure students receive rigorous instruction on a daily basis. If we have low expectations, then we are not feeding their needs and challenging them and encouraging them to continue to grow. The other number that I need to bring to our attention, and working with Sisters in Christ and talking to them about this number, this percentage right here, 3.7%, 76% of our students are classified as homeless. That's just the reported number. I know there are more children who are classified as homeless because they're either in a shared domicile with family members and they just have not completed the process. But once we know that students are homeless, either by reports or self-reporting, we make sure that they get the supports that they need in order to be successful and effective. And so when we talk about our students, I know that students some students haven't determined whether they want to go into college, go into the workforce, go into the military, but we need to make sure that students are equipped with the tools to be successful, whichever venue or avenue they choose. And so we have 42.4 of our students taking the SAT. And I think when you look at that number, you may say, that's a lot of number, because do they all go, that's a large number. Do they all go to college? They may not all go to college, but that doesn't mean we don't give them the resources to be able to make those choices. Priority in our school district. beginning with last year and the year before, with what we have observed in our community, what we've observed in the nation, and then just being attuned with looking at data in our schools. Safety is a priority. When we look at what the death rates around the nation, and the number one killer of our children is weapons, is guns. And so we've seen our share of weapons. There's no sense in hiding it. We've seen our share of weapons. Now, we don't teach a class on weaponry. However, students have access to weapons. And if I cannot go and collect all the weapons, I need to make sure that we're educating our community on how to safeguard those items. I'm not here to have a pro-gun, anti-gun discussion. I'm here to talk about having a child discussion. And so when we're talking about how do we safeguard our children, one of the things that we have done is we've partnered with an organization called Be Smart. And Be Smart is a group of individuals who have either lost children to gun violence or their children have lost their lives to suicide by use of guns. And so one of the things that Be Smart is famous for, popular for, is actually giving us resources so that we can transfer that information to our community. And so a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you all know, but we'll continue to do this, we had a gun lock distribution. We partnered with the chief of police, we partnered with Raytown, we partnered with Kansas City, and we distributed gun locks. And we had about 20 some odd folks who came out to get the gun locks, and they left and they were like, we need to tell our neighbors, because students only get access to weapons when they're not locked. And so it's about really educating our community in hopes that if you have a weapon in your home, whether children are trained on them or not, it is most important that they have a safety lock on it. And so that was one of the things we've done. We continue to have training with our staff about safety measures. All of our schools have guided entryways. Now, I can't take credit for that because it was something that was done prior to my arrival. And when I came here, I think that was the first thing I noted, and that was the safety of our buildings. We have the guided entryways. We continue to update our buzzer systems, our camera systems, just to make sure when our children come to school that they feel safe and they are safe, and not just our children, but our staff as well. When we look at the gun lock giveaways and some of the other things that we've been doing, whether it's lockdown simulation drills and just being cognizant of what's happening, we have our safety team that works very closely with us. Not only does our safety team work very closely with us, but I want to give a shout out to the chiefs of Kansas City and of Raytown, but also the other jurisdictions, Independence and Lee Summit, because oftentimes our children live right on those borders or they go to a relative's house. And so it's important that we have those relationships to make sure we're getting those calls, to be responsive and to be proactive and not reactive should something occur in the community. When we look at the district highlights, I want to give a shout out to the mayor, because one of the things he talked about the other day in his state of the city was really being a part of a community and emphasizing the community. And some of this information he communicated during that time, I'm just going to do it a little better. So I couldn't let that one go. I'm sorry. It's the middle school person in me, sorry. So when we talk about the success of our children, we had students this year, I don't know if you know, that we had students who were selected in the all-state choir. That is a big accomplishment for those individuals. And what we like to do is always recognize. So in our board meetings, we have something called the Ray of Hope. And I believe that that was our first theme, and I believe that we need to continue to make sure that our children and our staff are our rays of hope, where we provide opportunities for happiness, opportunities for growth, to make sure that they have a purpose so that we continue to move them towards excellence. And so when we talk about our students, we need to really capitalize on the positive things that are happening, because oftentimes we only hear the negative things that are happening about our children. And I don't care what anyone says, our children are absolutely amazing. And thank you for talking about the Read Across America, and I know I'm deviating in a way, but it is an absolute great opportunity. I read this morning to a bunch of fourth graders, and you'll never be the same once you do it, but it is a great opportunity for you to get into the schools just to see how amazing our children are. We have to stop letting people tell the story about our children, right? We have to tell the story. We have students at Raytown High School, a student who was named as a National Merit Scholar. Absolutely amazing, humble young man. It's just an absolute honor to be able to celebrate and recognize the positives of our children. We had Project Adam Heart Safe Schools, where all of our district offices and our schools participated in this activity, where we were able to establish a process, if you will, to support individuals in the event of an emergency such as cardiac arrest. And yes, Dr. Martin Knox was on her knees playing with Adam, who was on the floor. And so, yes, he worked, or I worked, one of them. We also had Senorita Hurst, who was named as Missouri Teacher of the Year finalist. It was an amazing event to go and hear all the educators around the state of Missouri, but I still say our Lauren is top notch and she is the best. The things that she does for children outside of instruction, it's something that I say, yes, we have a curriculum. Yes, there are things that kids need to be tested on, but kids won't absorb. They don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And if you've never seen her teach, you're missing a treat. It is an absolute amazing environment that she's established. And again, I still say she is the best in the state and all around, and I'll have her compete against any others anywhere else. It was talked about earlier when we talk about April 16th. If you have not purchased your tickets, and yes, this is a plug, this is going to be an amazing event, united in song. Again, going back to the theme of community, the unification within our community, but also supporting our children. I can't wait to go. And most people think I'm just excited because I'm an artsy person. I'm just excited because of the talents of our children that will be on exhibition. The Alumni Hall of Fame. We celebrated those who we take pride in, who are part of Raytown. We had those who were inducted, and I'll just go ahead and say Vicky's not here, but the mayor is here, and he was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And so we thank you for continuing to represent Raytown in such a positive way moving forward. Our Wellness Center, we're sitting here, we're continuing to push what's happening in our Wellness Center. If you've not been there, the new equipment, the way in which it's been remodeled, these classes that are being offered, as some people will say, if you want to meet me there when I get back on my schedule, because I was coming, y'all missed that one, I was coming quite regularly to take some of the classes in the evenings, but because of other commitments, I've not been there. But I encourage you to be a part of the Wellness Center. Make sure you come. It's a resource here, and many communities do not have this access. It's a great place to be. When we talk about the work, I talked about Ms. Vernon earlier, and she's having meetings right now. One of the things that we've been doing upon my arrival is Ms. Vernon actually sits down with each department, with our principals. She actually is a direct report of Dr. Calcara, and having the conversation about what is it that you need as a school, what do we need as a district to make sure we're balancing the money. We are going to be fiscally responsible. And so I'll talk about student enrollment in a few minutes, because when student enrollment declines, so does funding. When students don't come to school, it impacts funding. And so we have to make sure that we're able to manage what it is that we do. And one of the things I say is that a dollar should not dictate what we give children. Amen. What we give children is what they need, and then we'll make it work with the monies that we have. Okay, and so one of the things, you can't see the number down here, but this is the fluctuation of our fund balance and our revenue balance. So starting in 2018, our revenue balance was at 18.9, and again, it taken an incline and a decline, and right now we're projected at 28.6. And so we're good, because there's also a requirement by the state in terms of your financial balance that you have your revenue on hand to make sure you're able to operate effectively. Our enrollment trends, I talked about it a few moments ago. If you can see, I always ask the staff to look at data in a 5-year trend, right? These numbers fluctuate. You have COVID in here, and so I didn't want to just do 5 years because COVID was an anomaly, so we took it a little further back. But when you look at our numbers, last year we were at 7,900, now we're at 76. That's about 300 kids. And there are multiple reasons for that. You have a low birth rate in our community, so children aren't being born. Right? So that means there are no children who are being enrolled. When children graduate, sometimes they return, but they don't. When they come back, they bring their children. So this number can fluctuate. We actually had someone prior to my arrival do a study to talk about the enrollment here in Raytown. And so we continue to try to push our children, but I will just say this. Right now, there's a bill on the table for open enrollment. It frightens me. I'm not going to tell you how to vote and what not to vote, because this is not a political conversation. This is a child conversation. You'll always hear me say that. If open enrollment occurs, that number could change. And I don't mean little bit. I mean drastically. And when the number changes, so does the funding, so does the community. And I'll start with the community first, because there's a breakdown in community when children aren't where they belong. Right? We need to galvanize around our children to make sure we're giving them the support that they need so they can be successful. They're our children. It's our community. It's our responsibility. And so if we lose children to other districts, there's another piece that goes with this. We have to support them, and they have to be transported. And so, again, that is on the table for open enrollment. And let me just full disclosure. I believe a parent should have choices of what they think is best for their children. But I don't believe it should be a mass push to get children to go somewhere else. And so I will fight to make sure we keep our children, to recapture our children, whether they're homeschooled, whether they're private school, whether they're charter school, whether they're other districts, again, because it impacts our community far greater than what most people can understand. And then with that comes the funding. And if funding is decreased, then that means staffing has to be decreased, which means then we have to look at what we do for facilities. And what does all that do? It impacts community. Our way forward. Last year, we were so proud in the work that we've done. We actually redid our goals because at first there was the district goals, superintendent's goals, and the board goals. And you can't have all those goals and be effective. So we streamlined the work that we're doing. So with our board, of course, always, the first priority is always student achievement. That's what we're in education for. It's student achievement. The next is something that Dr. Kalkara works hard on, and that's ensuring that we're able to attract, retain, and recruit high quality individuals to be around our children, not just people, high quality people to be around our children. The other is to strengthen community relations and communications, hence why we're here, right? I can't put it in writing and not effectively do it. We have to continue to make sure our community understands what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where their voice is important in making sure we're able to accomplish those goals we have identified. Maintaining fiscal and operational integrity. We talked about that a few moments ago in terms of the financial aspect. And board governance. This one is a new one because this is where the board holds the board accountable. Most people say, Penelope, do something with your board. I'm not their boss, right? Like, see how that works out for me. Let's see how that works out. If I call a meeting and saying I'm going to reprimand you or this is what you, let's see how that works out because McDonald's is always hiring. And so, and I don't mean the board. And so, that one went over your head too. You're all a 3 for 3. And no. And so we did the work, and we're in our second year of implementation, and I'll go to it in a few moments. But we also have a strategic plan that guides our work. It's like a map. It is your compass. Many of us get in our cars, and we have our GPS that's put on. Now, if you're like me, you don't listen to your GPS anyway. But I do listen to this, and I make sure that we follow this because our focus, again, is aligned to the board and district goals. But in our strategic plan, we're focused on learning, teaching, leadership, professional learning, and again, the wider community. Because a school district is only as strong as the community it's in. There's no other way to do it. When we talk about our strategic plan, if you want to, we have a dashboard. So when we talk about transparency, the board can go in, you can go in. We do the presentations at the board meetings. We update the community. We update the board. You can always go back and review the videos. Again, it's maintaining transparency. The information can be cross-referenced with what the state publishes, but it's also published for us. And there's a level of accountability for us all. And so we have a dashboard that allows us to see if we're meeting our goals, if we're moving forward. And again, this is accessible to everyone. So you'll know what's happening in our schools and with our children. I can't go beyond this presentation without talking about an appreciation for Raytown Quality Schools. If you've not had the opportunity to visit Raytown High, South High, we've done the ribbon cutting ceremonies, and they are just masters of art. If you go into the environment, more so to see the joy that it's brought our children, the excitement that it's given our children, the motivation of our children, that's what it's all about. Yes, it looks great, but it also has encouraged our children to want to be a part and to have some ownership in their learning. If you've not had the chance to go and you weren't able to attend the ribbon cutting, I encourage you to go visit. Raytown High was the first ribbon cutting that was open with the auxiliary gym. And I'll tell you, we developed the auxiliary gym to make sure that we were not in violation and we had space for our children to be able to learn and grow. But we've actually used it for other reasons this year that we had not planned for. And so I'm glad we had it because one of the days we had to close one of our schools because of a water main break and we bust our kids over there. And the kids went in and were able to look at it and say, wow. And even the staff. So they were excited to be in that space. It was amazing. Again, we didn't design it for that, but it's now going to be called the multi-purpose from my perspective. And so if you travel through Raytown and you take a moment to look at our schools, we're also doing something else. And again, it's the appreciation for the community for investing in the bonds and voting for the bonds. We are making sure we utilize the funds for what they're designed to be used for. And because we had some leftover funds, we have been able to transform our buildings and modernize them. Because most people go and they invest in new buildings. I don't know if you've ever looked at the price tag on building a new school, but it is not a price tag that we want to talk about today, tomorrow, or quite some time, because we're talking about billions of dollars to build a building. So what we're doing is the face of our schools. If you go through and you see all the construction going on, the facade is now shifting. So when we start back in school, you may look and say, what school is that? It's still our schools, but we're changing the look of the facade. And so I just want to say thank you to Mr. Husted for all the work that he's done with the construction, with the innovation, with the creativity, and moving forward. We did the presentation in front of the board. And again, there were children that were in the audience, and just to see the looks on their faces, and some of them are graduating, they were like, why didn't they do that when I was still here? And so as an alumni, we encourage you to come back to be a part, because again, it is for you, it's for our children, is to make sure that they have something that they take pride in and that they can invest in as well. And so when we give the thanks, the Raytown Education Foundation, providing scholarships, opportunities, grants, all those things that they do to encourage and to support and show support for our teachers and our students. So Martha, I just want to thank you for all that you do. It's truly appreciated. To Caring for Kids, they're not here, but they also partner with us to make sure we have those connections with our business partnerships for Rotary. I said this at the very beginning. And finally, to our Chamber of Commerce, I just want to thank you all for what you do for our school district and never giving up on us. And so I encourage you to continue to be a part of Raytown Quality Schools. I did it. I did it. Marissa, girl, don't do it. I was thinking about doing it. I did it. And so I usually get in trouble because I usually go beyond my time, because it's the passion in me about what we do for our children. I am never going to quit on our children, and my staff is never going to quit on our children. I know there's a lot going on about what's going to happen with education, what's going to happen with public education. Understand that in Raytown, we're going to keep doing what's best for children. Whatever's best for children, we're going to keep doing it. We're not going to break laws, but we're going to keep doing what's best for children. And so I said last night when we had our Citizens Advisory meeting, I said, you know, before there were letters in front of kids' names and numbers behind kids' names, and before there was an identification process where you talked about where children came from, they're children first. Never forget they're children first. Before we talked about any other component, whether it's some of the acronyms that have been misused or used, it was called differentiation when I was going through school. And so that's the practice that we use to make sure we engage our teachers, our students, and our community. And so I, again, continue to thank you for your support. I'm forever grateful, and continue to push and be there to wrap your arms around our children and our school district. And thank you.